Hello and welcome back to the Creative and Curious Club. I'm your host Leanne, and if you listened to the latest episode of the podcast, you'll know I shared this little mission with myself to stop waiting for the perfect conditions to create and instead start building through creating in tiny, realistic ways. Now, that isn't through some huge dramatic life overhaul, because who has time for that? But through those small moments that you can find in the week. And honestly, this week has been a mixture of messy, emotional, tiring, and all the normal things of life and motherhood and work and trying to figure things out. But something interesting happened, and I want to talk about it in today's episode. I managed to find two tiny pockets of time to create. Now, those weren't hours and they were not perfect studio times, days. They weren't created in a specific space or place. They were just small moments that I grabbed here and there. And weirdly, I think they mattered more than I expected. One of those moments was working a little more on the children's book that I started with a friend last year. I'm in a full redraft mode or phase of the book, and I was able to get a few moments here and there when baby was sleeping in the midnight hours, and then through the week in general, I started grabbing the moments when I could, which was when baby was sleeping. And the other came from a trip that we took to the Bristol Aquarium last weekend, where I was inspired through seeing the fishes and the Sea Life Centre through my son, who's just a few months old. So I ended up sketching the turtles. There were some beautiful turtles that we saw. They ended up inspiring my latest sketch. It just completely stayed in my mind afterwards. So yeah, I started to draw from the experience that I had. I'll tell you, there's nothing like seeing something for the first time through a baby's eyes. That definitely helps to keep me creative and curious. But then, first thing I want to touch on today is around the reality of the right creativity right now. I think sometimes online we see creativity presented as this beautiful, uninterrupted flow. You know, those slow mornings, coffees in aesthetic locations, perfect sketchbooks, and people with endless time. And right now in my life, it just doesn't look like that at all. I'm really rebuilding creativity inside the naps that I get, the tiredness, work. I have a day job and dishes and life admin and the overwhelm. And honestly, I think a lot of people listening could probably relate to that too. And maybe you're trying to reconnect with a hobby. Maybe you used to paint or write or play music. And maybe you spent years in survival mode too. And I think what I'm learning is that creativity doesn't disappear. Sometimes it just goes quiet for a little while. And that leads me to the second part of this podcast episode. I wanted to update you on the children's book that I mentioned earlier on. And it's the first one that I've worked on as an illustrator. And in general, I've written stories before, but this is the first kind of proper project that I've been able to be a part of. And what surprised me wasn't really how much I got done this week, it was how quickly I remembered myself. I felt like reconnecting with a part of me that's still there underneath the stress and the responsibilities and all the noise. Not perfectly, not magical by any means, but enough to remember, oh, there you are. You don't always need a massive momentum. I think you just need 5 or 10 minutes to be intentional sometimes, and that's enough to keep the thread alive and to keep it very simple about what it is you're trying to achieve. I have recently found my mission, and I've recently felt reconnected to that without trying to overcomplicate it, jazz it up. I've just kept it simple to what it is, and that is to build a life around doing what I love. And I believe others can do the same. So I want to spend that time encouraging others as well. I wanted to show you some of the footage from that trip because there was something about watching the turtle move slowly through the water with its partner that really stayed with me afterwards. You know, none of those fishes seemed like they were rushing, seemed like they were trying to perform. and they didn't feel like they were under any immense pressure other than the water around them. I realised that's the kind of pace I want when it comes to creativity. I think how creativity has to work in some seasons of life will look different. It might not be fast, it might not be perfect, it might not be productive all the time or highly produced. It's just keeping it alive. And I think sometimes we believe creativity only counts when we become something impressive that we have been shown on media. But maybe creativity is also just noticing things, feeling the wonder and paying attention and being present in the moment. Maybe it's sketching something because it moved you, and maybe it's playing a piece of music because you were inspired. Maybe curiosity itself is just part of the creative process. I wanted this episode to be really focused on not productivity, but on the conversations, the little moments, not how to do more, but actually permission for creativity to look smaller for a while, permission for it to begin again and look different in one season from the next, permission for it to be slow and to create inside of an ordinary life instead of waiting for those perfect conditions and those perfect locations. If you're listening to this and feeling disconnected from yourself or from creativity or from joy, then maybe can I encourage you and myself not to ask, how do I completely reinvent my life to make this fit my idea? But maybe ask, where is one tiny pocket of curiosity that I can follow this week? Maybe it's sketching, or it's taking a moment to journal, or it's visiting somewhere new. And maybe it's just buying some cheap watercolors or picking up a musical instrument or a sewing kit and just taking time to notice a turtle at the aquarium, notice a flower in your garden. You know, those tiny moments actually matter. And I think enough tiny moments eventually become a big life. And so I just want to take a moment to share that with you today, and thank you so much for being here and for following along in this journey with me while I figure it all out in real time. I've done a soft launch of changing this channel recently to become more focused around the podcast, and I'm really keen to try and reach out and have chats with other people so we can learn from their life about how they were curious and how they've stayed creative in seasons of busyness or in what feels like maybe drought. Um, so hopefully we can have more conversations to inspire you and help you along the way. And if this episode resonated with you, then I genuinely would love to hear what your tiny pocket of creativity has looked like recently. And you can message me over on Instagram at the Creative and Curious Club, or find me at Leanne Foley Illustrates. And of course, if you enjoyed this episode, it would mean the world and help this podcast get out there if you would leave a review, because it helps more curious and creative people find these conversations. So thank you for joining me this week. And until next time, make sure you stay creative and stay curious.